Welcome, everybody, to the next iteration of Cloudshops, this time featuring the awesome Jeff Ellis, um, who I will introduce in a second. Just going to acknowledge once again that we are delivering to you these workshops from the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh unceded territories, and as well, on my end, from Kakite territories in New Westminster, as well as the territories of some other Hunkaminam speaking peoples, as it was a shared area. Today, I'm introducing Jeff, who's going to teach us all about preparing files for print for those of you seeking to create comic books, but don't really quite know how to get a file ready and go through with the whole process. Jeff is our local tech wizard for these kinds of things. And is also one of the founding members of Cloudscape, for which we are eternally grateful. Thanks, Jeff. So I'm going to let him go about and start this today. Oh, and for those who are just joining us for the first time, the disembodied voice you're hearing right now is Oliver, the vice president of Cloudscape and the host of this series. So without further ado, take it away, Jeff.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Oliver. Yeah, so I have about 20 years of experience in working with the Adobe suite and working in graphic design. And I've, as Oliver said, I've probably designed had a hand in the design of almost every Cloudscape book. And actually, I'm probably one of the few people that says that InDesign is one of their favorite programs. I actually think InDesign allows me to do a lot of things that you really can't do in other pieces of software. So for today, I'm going to be going through the InDesign file for my own little mini comic, Teaching English in Japan, Volume 1. And I'll sort of rebuild it and walk you guys through sort of what needs to go into the InDesign file. And then if we have some time, I'll maybe talk about a little bit extra stuff on maybe building a cover for a book with a spine, and maybe a little bit of stuff on color management. We'll see how we do. We might just get enough time to put the book together. So anyways, without further ado, I want to sort of jump in and talk a little bit about InDesign, the program. And I'll just pull up my my screen share here. Hopefully you're now seeing my my InDesign interface here. I'm just going to move the Zoom stuff out of the way on my end here. Okay, so yeah, so I've got my Teaching Us in Japan file open, and this is the file that I printed, and I'll sort of walk you guys through a couple things about the interface, about the file setup. Before I get into that, I actually find with InDesign, one of the most important things to deal with is just the preferences, which is kind of a strange thing because you often think it should just be ready to go out of the box. But I do find there's a couple key things to watch for in your InDesign preferences. The other thing I also would like to mention is when you're setting up your preferences, it's a little quirk in InDesign. You're setting the preferences for the specific document that's open. And if you don't have a document open, then you're setting preferences for the application. So what I mean there is right now I've got this book open. So if I go into the preferences and I set the units and increments to centimeters, I'm only setting centimeters for this document. And so if you guys have ever worked with InDesign and you wonder why every single time you start a new document, it's using picas, it's because the application defaults to picas unless you change it. And if you change it while you have a document open, you're only changing the measurements on the one document that you have open. So I would actually say before you even start a document, before you start anything, set a couple key preferences in your system before you even start a new document. Now I've already set mine, so I'm not going to close my document, but I would say for you, if you're doing this for the first time, just set up your preferences before you begin anything else. So there's a couple key points to watch out for. So because I'm a little bit of a, old school in the general settings, I like to set the use legacy new document dialog box. So I don't like the new interface that they've developed. I like the legacy. So I'm going to use legacy new document. It's a little more precise. That's one little general thing. Units and increments. I work in inches. The print industry works in inches. We could get into why the print industry uses inches instead of centimeters in Canada, basically because we sell paper to the United States. But the print industry works in inches, so I think it makes sense if you're planning to print your book to design in inches, because your printer's selling you paper in inches. Like, it's all calibrated for inches. So I'm going to do my horizontal and vertical measurements in inches. And then one other really important one at the very end here is the appearance of black. So this is a strange one, but basically the appearance of black is how InDesign is going to handle black ink on the paper. So there's two kinds of black. There's basically just 100% black ink. And then there's rich black, which is like black that contains cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. It's a darker black, but it's not the kind of black you want to use if you're doing lettering, for example. You want your speech balloon letters to just be processed black. So to make sure you're seeing things accurately, you want to display accurately on the screen, and you want to output accurately when you're printing and exporting a PDF. So those are just my three kind of key points: is use the legacy new document, make sure you're working in inches, and then just make sure your blacks are displaying and outputting accurately. So I like to set that up first, right? So the next thing that you want to do before you really begin your project is think about the document you're working on. So I'm going to be producing this, stapled booklet. It's not going to have a spine, and it's about 56 pages. And, I could probably build this whole thing in one document and it'd be ready to go to print. I also made sure that my artwork has enough space for margins and bleed. And so before I get into my document, I'm just going to open up one like a little demonstration image here. So when we're setting up a document for print, there's a couple key things you want to think about. So when we print, my actual book page is this black box here. That's what that's what my readers are going to see when they read this book. But I've extended the artwork out further than the page. So there's artwork going to this red line. That red line is my bleed. And so when I print this, we're going to trim off, we're going to cut along these lines here. These are my crop marks. We're going to cut along here, and that's going to give me my final page. And it's going to be this illusion that we're printing off the edge of the paper. And that's basically, standard print practice. We print things bigger than they're meant to be, and then we cut them to be smaller. You can't really print to the edge of a paper on a standard printer. You sort of have to print and then trim it down to be a little bit smaller. So it's really important that you have your bleed area if you're planning to have panels or artwork that goes off the edge of the page. Now, the other important thing is you need your margins. That's this blue box I've indicated here. So the margin is going to be where I contain all my text frames, all my speech balloons, generally my panel borders, all should be contained within the margin space. So, I gave myself a 1/4 inch margin space, and I gave myself a 1/4 inch bleed space. So that's a 1/2 inch total, right? That's a lot of space. In modern printing, you can probably get away with an 1/8 inch bleed, but you still want a 1/4 inch margin. So, you're looking at about, 1/2 inch to maybe, just under 1/2 inch of space that is kind of space that can't be occupied by anything important, right? So, if people need to see the license plate of this van, I should not have it below the margin. It might get cut off, right? Any speech balloons, panel borders, all that stuff really needs to stay inside the margin space. And then, just because this comes up a lot, especially when I'm setting up a document in InDesign, I also included a slug. So if you're ever wondering what a slug is, A slug is where my cut lines are appearing. And often in the slug, you'll have stuff like this, where it just talks about like, this is page 49 of Teach English in Japan, right? This is stuff that's maybe useful to the graphic designer, stuff that's useful to the printer, not really important for the reader because it's going to get cut off, right? But this is something that might be used internally to keep the pages organized when they're collating, for example. Not particularly important for a comic book artist generally, right? If you're doing your own mini comic, you don't need a slug, right? I don't really put stuff in the slug area, even for the professional work I do. Usually I let the printer manage that stuff. So that's just a quick overview on the bleed margin slug.
Why is it called a slug?
I don't know why it's called a slug. I think just old school printer terminology, you have to ask like some grizzled pressman.
Some old vet, yeah. All right.
But yeah, as people ask me, like, I don't know why it's called that, but people often wonder what it is, why InDesign has that dialog box. And so it's just specifying space outside the bleed area. And again, it's outside the bleed area, so people aren't going to see it. So yeah, so this is my little visual example, and then I'm going to apply this in my work. So again, before I begin a project, you want to assess the artwork and like make sure that there's enough space, right? So if I'm doing my own artwork, it's easy enough for me to correct things. But like if I'm handling like an anthology and I can see that the panel borders only have, say, like 1/8 of an inch before it gets to the edge, that's a red flag for me, right? So you really want to make sure there's a generous amount of space from the panel borders going out to the edge. And if you're an artist and you're submitting to an anthology and you're not sure if you're giving enough space for the margin and bleed, give more space, right? Like it's never bad to just have extra space going outside. We can always crop it in InDesign, but if the art doesn't exist, it's really hard to fix, right? If the panel borders are hugging the edge of your artboard and there's just no space, that's really hard to correct if it's supposed to bleed somewhere and there isn't extra artwork, right? Anyways, so that's kind of my little preamble of like making sure the artwork is prepared effectively. Now let's look at building the artwork itself. And maybe before I build a new document, I'll just kind of walk you through a couple of the key tools that I'm going to use in InDesign. So InDesign has a lot of tools that are like Illustrator. So it has a selection tool and a direct selection tool. And really, you just need the selection tool because if I say select the cover, the artwork is selectable in the frame. And then there's this little Frisbee disc. If I click on that, that's direct select. And direct select would let me move the art within the frame. So it's kind of cropping things, right? So I'll just undo that right now. But like basically you can select the outer edge of things to move them, or you can click inside of things to reposition things within a frame. So that's those top two arrows. There's a lot of stuff I don't use. And then there's the type tool, which is how you put type in your work. I'm going to add some type later on in my demonstration. There's a couple basic drawing tools that function very much like they do in Illustrator: pen tool, pencil tool, line tool. And then there's the frame tool and the rectangle tool. And I mean, they're basically the same thing. The rectangle frame is supposed to be something you put a photograph inside, and the rectangle tool is supposed to be a visual rectangle. But I could put a photo in a rectangle and it becomes a frame, and I could color a frame and use it as a rectangle. So I personally think these could just be one tool, but I'll be using the frame tool to put my comics in here. Other than that, there's a couple like scissors, free transform, gradient tools similar to Illustrator. I don't use them very often. There is an eyedropper, but I will just mention that. So there's an eyedropper that's kind of buried in here, but the default tool is this color theme tool. It's kind of a fun tool if you're coming up with a color scheme for your design work. But if you don't know that it's there, it can be a little disconcerting. Color theme tool is fun. If I click on my cover here, it just samples colors out of the artwork. It gives me a little color palette. And if I wanted to design my book based on the colors found in the cover here, I can just add that to my swatches, and then those colors will be available to me in my design work, right? So color themes are pretty cool little tool there. But it's not an eyedropper, right? So that's what this other guy is all about, the regular eyedropper tool. And of course, your classic hand tool, zoom tool, just to navigate your document. And then over here, there's the panels. So obviously swatches is where your colors are going to be saved. That's an important one. I mean, there are some like line tools and, color pickers, but I don't use those so much. Really, my key tools over here is the most important panel is your pages panel, because InDesign is a multi-page document. So this is how you're going to manage the pages within the work itself. So all of my 56 pages are down below here, and my parent pages are up top. My layers panel can be pretty important if I want to do some layering. I'm probably going to do a little bit today. And of course, my links panel is where it manages all the images that are connected to my work. And I'll explain links a little more as I place them in the document. But those are really my three important panels over here, which is pages, layers, and links. And then probably the next most important are my style sheets. So there's your paragraph styles, character styles, and object styles. And again, if you're opening InDesign for the first time ever, you might be confronted with this interface here that really is kind of useless. It's called the Essentials. It's the default setting, and it doesn't have what you need to do your work. So I recommend you immediately switch over to Essentials Classic. Essentials Classic has all the tools you're going to need. So I'm working in Essentials Classic. I got my preferences set. I know how InDesign works, so I'm going to be working on putting my document together. I'm going to reference a couple of the panels as I go. So I've got my sort of main image here as a reference, but let's just start a new document. So I'm going to build this comic basically from scratch. I've got my files on hand. So let's see how this goes here. So I'm going to start by making a new document. And again, when you open InDesign, you're going to notice there's documents, books, and libraries. I've never used an InDesign library ever. An InDesign book is useful if you're doing something complicated, like you have a book that's going to have a shared interior with like a hardcover and a softcover version. If you have like multiple files you need to connect, book files are useful. But if you're just doing like a one-off comic project, aside from maybe your cover, I mean, you could do everything in a single document. So I'm just going to set up an InDesign document here. And this is that legacy new document panel. So if you're using InDesign for the first time, you haven't set it to the legacy panel, you're going to get that big honking screen with all the little pictures of the paper sizes. All you need is this, right? So I'm just going to go through the settings here in the legacy new document panel. So first of all, my intent is to print. Now, InDesign will tell you it can do web, but it can do mobile. It can do print. If you're doing web mobile stuff, there's better software for that, but there's really nothing better for printing a document. So I'm going to do my print document here. Right now, I'm going to start with a one-page document. So I know ultimately I'm going to have a 56-page document, but I can add that later. So I'm just going to start with a one-page document that starts at 1. So the number of pages is going to be 1. I'm going to set it to facing pages. Facing pages means that I've got my pages like left, right, beside each other. If I didn't set it to facing pages, that would mean I'm doing like a postcard or a business card, like a double-sided piece of paper. So my page number starts at 1, and then right now it's set to a standard letter size document, and I've got to change that. So I'm just going to adjust this to the original measurements that I set way back when I first did teach English in Japan. Very strange measurement of 6 inches wide by 7.5 inches tall. So quite square. I don't need to worry about setting any columns here. And then my margin distance, I'm going to set to 0.25. And right now it's linked. So it's doing a 1/4 inch top, bottom, inside, outside. And one thing to note with InDesign when it measures your margin is it's measuring the inside margin where the fold is, and it's measuring the outside margin where it's getting cut. It's not thinking about left and right, it's thinking about inside and outside. So that means that your inside margins touch each other, your outside margins are far away from each other. I'm going to keep it at 1/4 inch except for the bottom. So I'm going to break the link and I'm going to increase the bottom margin just a little bit so I can give myself a little bit more space for page numbers. So I'll push that up to like 375. And then for the bleed, like I say, a modern printer is able to accommodate an 1/8 of an inch bleed, which is, you know, pretty thin. But I originally designed these pages for a 1/4 inch bleed. So just to make things nice and smooth, I'm going to accommodate my document to my artwork, which again, like the artwork was designed for 1/4 inch bleeds. I'll set my document up to accommodate to that. There's no sense in, you know, changing my InDesign setup and then fighting with the Photoshop files, right? So I've got my 1/4 inch bleed. These are my settings, pretty happy with that. I'll say okay, and I have my new document. And, you know, InDesign, you can have multiple documents open. So I've got these tabs here. There's my original document I can reference, and then I've got my new document here.
I have a question here.
Yeah, sure.
From other sharks, which is there a reason that you use alternating pages rather than spreads?
Oh, you mean you noticed in my pages panel this this business here? Yeah, there is. I'm actually going to incorporate that in my final construction here. The original document is going to be in spreads. Why I do alternating spreads like this? I'll see if I can find a good example in here. Probably near the end. I didn't do as many bleeds. There we go. That's a good example. So when I was doing Teach English in Japan, I set up a bleed, but I didn't know if the pages were going to be on the left-hand side or the right-hand side. So I'm bleeding things on both the left and the right. And so what that means is if my pages were joined together like this, I would have this business here where suddenly the edge of one page is overlapping on another page, right? And like I can adjust what page is in front and what page is in behind. But again, this page bleeds and this page bleeds. And like, I could definitely just compress the frame. I could shrink my frame to the edge. But when I'm placing my images, they want to be centered and they want to fill frame proportionally. So I don't know which side of the page I want to trim off when I'm designing the artwork. So because I have a bleed on both sides, I found it's easier to just build the pages freestanding, because then I can just drop them in and they can bleed on all 4 sides. And then when I make my PDF, it just marries them together and I don't have to like readjust the frame or like slide images back and forth. Like it just drops right in the center and it bleeds on all 4 sides and like the PDF looks fine. So yeah, it's because comic book artists don't know where the fold is going to be. So they're bleeding on all 4 sides. So it's easier to let the pages float and just exist on all 4 sides and then let the PDF like stitch it together later.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it took me a while to learn that trick. And when I did, I saved myself a lot of time where I didn't have to like nudge things around to accommodate the fold.
Comics is all about saving time where you can, man.
Oh yeah. So I'm going to show you guys a couple really good time savers. And I think when you see how I set this up, it's going to make a little more sense too. So like I said, I've got a 1-page document and I'm going to just start by setting up my parent pages first. And so they've just changed the name. So if you're on an older version of InDesign, these used to be called master pages. And you know, that's old lingo. And so they've kind of updated it and now they're parent pages, but it actually makes a lot more sense because parent pages basically, they pass on all of the attributes to the other pages, right? So all of the pages in your document are the children of these pages. So whatever properties you give this page is going to pass those properties on to its children, right? And so you want to do actually a lot of your design work in the parent pages because that's going to repeat throughout the document. And then you don't have to, again, you don't have to keep redoing things over and over and over again. So I'm going to actually just set up a really simple InDesign parent page first, and then I'm going to do my comic art page specifically. So let's say for my first A parent here, let's say, I'm going to have some pages that have text inside of it. So I'm just going to define a text box inside of the margin space here. And then I'm going to define another text box in the margin space over here. And if I wanted to put a document between the two, if I click this little white box here, I can link them together. And all that means is like, if I were to put any like text inside, it just means the document it'll spread across both pages, right? So I'm not going to put any text in here right now, but I basically just got like a text frame ready to receive text should I need to put text in here. The other thing I'm going to do is put another little text frame in here. This one I'm going to draw on the bottom in the margin space, which normally it would be kind of a no-no, like don't draw stuff in the margin, but I'm going to put this little text frame in here just for one special little character. So in my type panel, there's a really useful function in the type menu under special characters. There's markers and current page number. So basically, if I insert a current page number marker, it's going to create a special character that will update the number based on the number of the page. So right now I'm on A parent, so it's coming up as a letter A. So I'm going to make a couple quick changes here. So first, I'm going to change the font. So let's go really classic here. Can't go wrong with Helvetica. I'll go Helvetica medium. And let's drop that down to like 8 because it's just a page number, right? It's very small. And then I'll do it horizontally centered like that. And there's my little text box that has a page number on it. Now it's sitting very high vertically. So there's one other little trick here. And if you're on a tiny laptop, you might not have access to this button. But if you're on a big monitor like mine, there's a button over here where I can adjust the vertical alignment in my text frame and make it align center vertically. If you don't see that, you can go to your object menu, text frame options, and just set your alignment center right there. So now I've got my little page number marker, and I'm just going to use my option key to make a duplicate. And so now I've got an A on both pages, right? Now that is the parent property, right? I've said the parents have an A at the bottom in the center, and they have a text frame on top. So if I go to my page 1, I now have a page that is marked as 1. If I were to add another page, let's say I added 2 more pages, now I have a page 2 and a page 3. So if I keep adding pages, they're just going to come up 4, 5, 6, 7. I don't have to add page numbers anymore. They're just there. They're part of the parent, right? So that is my kind of basic parent template. And just as a good habit for myself, because I always get worried about losing files, I'm just going to save this right now so I don't lose my work here. Okay, so that's like a basic parent page. Now I want to make a parent page very specifically for doing my comic book art. So in my pages panel, I'm going to create a new parent. And this is going to be the original one was a B parent. This is going to, or sorry, the original one was an A parent. This one's going to be a B parent. Now I'm going to make it based on A parent. So that means that this page is going to inherit the properties from the A parent. So it's almost like a grandparent, right? So basically the properties for my A parent are going to my B parent, and then I can apply my B parent to other pages in my document. Now in this case, I'm going to make this a single parent. So there's no left page, right page. It's just one single page. So I'll say, okay. And I have a single page parent now, and it's got the B page number already marked off on it. Now, I know I put a text frame here. I'm going to use Command Shift and just click on it, there's that text frame. Now, I'm not going to put text on my B masters. I want to put comic pages here. So I'm going to delete that text frame, and I'm going to grab my frame tool, and I'm going to put a frame right in the red bleed area here. So there's my comic frame here. So it's got a little X in it. There's where I want my comic art to go. And if I were to apply my B master to say page 3, you can see that immediately that page gets a little X frame in it, right? So I can now decide whether I want to have pages that have image frames on them or pages that have text boxes in them. So I basically created an A parent for text and a B parent for comic art. If you want to get more, if you want to get into labels, you can pull up your options. And so I could call this like comic art instead of parent. So it could be B comic art. And where's my options? I should probably select both. There we go. Text. Okay. So now I'm going to put some comic art in, but before I put comic art in my document, I want to test this out. So I've created a frame, and I want to test out my comic book art. So I'm going to place an image. So there's Command D or place. And so I'm going to place my image from my links folder here. In my links folder, I've got my comic images already mapped out. And actually, I want to point out to you guys one thing here. So in my files, I named them all TEIJ, Teach English in Japan, 01, 02, 03, 04, 05, all the way down to like 48, right? It doesn't seem super important, but you really want to make sure that you name your files with 01, 02, because if you don't name it 01, when you place with InDesign, it's going to grab page 1 and then page 10, 11, 12, 13, and then page 2. Like it goes by the digits. So if you have that 0 in front, it knows to put the single digits as the first thing to get placed. Now I'm just going to test this out with page 1 only. So I'm going to open this up, and I'm going to drop my image in here, and it's way too big, right? Now I can set some properties for this frame here. So I drop my image in, and it's not fitting. In your panel at the top here, you've got frame fitting options, and there's a great little option called fill frame proportionally. And there's also fit content proportionally. So in this case, fill frame is maybe giving me a little bit more space. And that actually fits really nicely, right? So I want my pages to fill frame proportionally by default. So I want all my frames to do this. So I'm going to do another really handy InDesign function, which is in my panels here, I've got object styles. So that's in your window and your styles menu here. And I've created a frame, an image frame that has a comic page in it. I'm going to just save an object style. And let's pull up the properties for it. So I'm going to call this comic art. And if I look at, there's a whole list of stuff. There's all these different options, right? The only thing I care about in this giant list here is there's my frame fitting options. So I'm just going to say fill frame proportionally as the default setting here. So this means that my pages will fill the frame proportionally. And I'll just say, okay. And that property of filling the frame is saved as an object style, and that object style is applied to this frame. If I delete this image, the frame itself still carries that property. Because that frame exists in my B parent, that means that this frame on page 3 and on page 4 and on page 5 also have that property. Now, there's one other thing I want to deal with in terms of my my parent pages, but maybe I'll just demonstrate by dropping a couple images in here. So I'm just going to place the first 3 pages of my comic. So 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to drop in page 1, page 2, and page 3. And I'll just have a quick look at how they're fitting. Okay, they're looking okay. Now, one thing I'm thinking when I'm looking at these is they are maybe getting a little bit out of the margin space here, a little bit below the margin space here. So because these all use my object style, I can edit my object style. So I can open up my object style, and in my frame fitting options, if I wanted to apply, say, like a crop value, I could impose like a crop value to like compress in the images a little bit. Or if I wanted to change the way the frames fit, you know, I could apply that here. If I do that, that's going to affect the pages in my document, right? So I'm updating how the frame fitting works. That's going to change how they fit in this document here. So I'll like squeeze these down just a little bit more. Let's go like negative value. I think that's going to be better. There we go. Okay. So I can edit the properties of the like comic art object style. That's going to update in all my pages, which could update basically how they fit in the rest of my document, right? If they're not fitting immediately, I can just kind of like reapply the style and they just kind of compress a little bit more, right? So one thing you're going to notice is when I put my comic book art in, though, my comic book art had a white space going around. And so what's that doing to my page number? It's covering it up, right? So again, if we think about our master page, or sorry, our parent page property, there's something really easy. There's a really easy fix that I can do here. So I'm going to go all the way back to that A parent I started with. And in my A parent, right now, I only have one layer. And one thing to think about with InDesign is layers exist in the whole document. So when I have a layer 1, every page in my document has a layer 1. If I rename that to art or artwork, every page has a layer called artwork. If I add a new layer called page number, every page in my document now has a layer called page number. If I select the page numbers on my A parent and I move them up into the page number section and lock it down, all page numbers exist on a page number layer and they are locked. So by making that change in my parent, my page numbers are now in front of the art because my art exists on a separate layer. My page numbers are in front and they're locked down. So again, I don't have to worry about moving things or adjusting the frame to show the page number. I just change where the page number is in the parent and it's fixed. So now that I've got this done, it's going to be really easy for me to complete laying out my comic because I've got my frame fitting set up in my object style. I've got my frame established in my B parent. So now I'm just going to go ahead and add my additional pages here. So I think I need about 53 more pages. So I'm going to insert pages after page 5, and let's just do 53. I can always delete if I've got too many. I'll just say okay. And when I did that, I specified B parent. So all pages are a B parent now, right? So let's go in and let's add our pages. So I did the first 3. So that means I start from 4 all the way to 48. Let's open that up. It'll take a minute because that's a lot of pages. Okay, and then I got to make sure I'm in my artwork layer again. And if I go to my page 6, you can see my cursor's loaded with 45 images. So I'm going to just click, and I have to go through the whole document, but all my pages have a frame. The frame is set to fit the margins. So I don't have to adjust anything. Again, I did all that upfront work so that now all I have to do is go to the page and click, and I'm dropping my images in, right? Now, just go through, I'm just going to finish placing my images. This is the super fun part of InDesign, just clicking and dropping your images in. As you go, it's a good idea to just make sure that everything's fitting correctly. If you see any weird page errors, you can always take note of them as you go. I had the advantage that I did a little bit of a rehearsal, so I've already kind of corrected a lot of my troublesome pages. I learned a lot about how little I knew about margins and bleed previously with this old book here. And there we go. That's our last page. So there's my book laid out here. They all have a page number and they all fit the margin space. Yeah.
It goes right on in.
Yeah, there we go.
Cool.
So maybe just because the question was asked, I'm just going to address the page staggering, right? So as we mentioned, I have them all staggered so that the conflict in the spine doesn't happen. So I'll just show you guys how that's done. That's really easy. You just select the pages that you want to affect. In this case, I'm just going to do the whole document. And if you right click after you select all the pages, this little function here, right now it says allow selected spread to shuffle. I'm just going to disable that function. You see all my page numbers have a little bracket on them. And all I do now is I grab my page and I pull it. There's a little line there and it staggers. So I just pull it till I see the line. Pull it till I see the line. And again, this is like, I'm maybe not going to do the whole page right now or the whole book right now, but basically you just go through and you just drag your pages and you get that staggered effect, right? And so now I've got my free floating pages all ready to go there. So I'll take a second to save my work. So let me drop in a couple other extra little points here. So if you've got your text already typed out, which I do, so I placed images, but you can also place text as well. So let me just go into my demo folder here. There's my text file. So if you have your text already typed out, you can actually just drop your text into a text frame, and it'll place just like an image. And if you want to edit your text, it's pretty easy to do so. So right now this is brought in like its own kind of image style, or its own kind of text style, I should say. Generally, when you're doing design work in InDesign, it's a good idea to define your text styles as well as your object styles. So something I should have done earlier on, for example, was I should have probably selected my page number style and just define that as a page number. Lock that down, go back to artwork. Okay, so let's go into here. So let's say I wanted to like design the type that's going in here. So again, in my paragraph styles, I can give myself a new style sheet. I'll apply it and I'll just call it body copy. And I'm just gonna push this little button that says clear overrides. I'm going to take out any special properties that got copied over when I placed it. And then I'm just going to set my character properties right now. So right now it's set for times. Let's do Helvetica again. I'll do Helvetica new. Maybe we can go 10 points. 12-point leading. And I like to do optical kerning. And then I'm just going to check my paragraph formats so I can see here under indents and spacing. It's aligned left, which is great, but then it's got this weird 1/2-inch right indent. I don't want that. And it's got all this space after. I definitely don't want that. And it's got this space between paragraphs. I also just want that at 0. And I can preview what I'm doing. So there's my condensed text. So let's say, okay, and now I've kind of styled my type, right? Now, I've got some text that might be better for the end of the book here. So I'm just going to cut that with Command X. And if I go into my Pages panel, let's say I go to the end of my story here. So let's say on this last page here, I'll stagger it over. Oops. There we go. Oops. Okay, there we go. So let's go to this page here. So let's say I want to put this as a text page. I can just drag my text parent onto here. And if I Command Shift, I can unlock my text box, paste, and there's my little bio at the end. And let's just go back to the beginning here. This is my copyright text. So maybe for this, I can align it to the bottom. And if I wanted to do any like emphasis points, this is where you could also do character styles. So I could do like a bold character style. The nice thing about character styles are you can sort of modify your paragraph style. So in this case, maybe I just want it to be bold, and maybe I want it to be 12 point, right? So anything I highlight here, I can apply bold, and it just gives it that property, right? So this lets me do a little bit more of the like design of the book. Now, since we're running a little bit, I think we've got about 15 minutes here. Just so we can kind of cover sort of getting the whole process done. You know, when you're putting your book together in InDesign, your comic pages, I think, are the easy part. Doing stuff like your cover and your title pages is maybe the harder part. And that's where you're kind of arranging like different text boxes and different image frames and sort of putting things together to create your finished product, right? Generally, InDesign is really good at reconciling all your different assets. So for example, like if I wanted the, so for example, if I wanted my cover image here, nope, there, that's better. Huh. I'm gonna try staggered pages you can wrestle with sometimes. Anyways, if I was doing the cover image, for example, I might give it a none. And then if I place my cover image, let's go back into my links here. So, you know, I'd maybe have a piece of artwork that was drawn in Photoshop. Then I can place that in here. But then I also created a title piece in Illustrator. And so I can put that in my margins, and there I have my title, right? So I'm building a lot of my assets externally and then orchestrating them together in InDesign. So, you know, my title was done in Illustrator, my artwork was done in Photoshop, and then I bring them together to create my final title image here. You know, we could spend more time on like the design process, but I want to get into just getting the artwork output for print. So I just want to go through a couple key points here at the end. So one thing before you export for print, before you do your final print document, I think it's a good idea to check your links. And so this is that really useful panel in InDesign called the links panel. If you look in the links panel, it'll tell you the format of your image, it'll tell you the color space of your image, and it'll tell you the resolution of your image, and it'll tell you the effective resolution of your image. And really, this number doesn't matter. It's the effective number that matters. So effectively, my cover image is 556 PPI. So definitely printable. If it's 300 or above, no problem. If it's below 300, that's where we have an issue. So before you print your work, it's a good idea to do a spot check and just make sure that your images are giving you the resolution that you need and that they're using the color space that you need. So I can see all my interior pages, they're grayscale, they're 680 PPI. This is not going to be a problem to print. So let's assume that, we had a little more time. We went through, we did all the arrangement of, the titles and extra little design elements. We added in the inside cover and title elements. We're all done. We're ready to print our book, right? So there's a couple key things to finish up. So when you're all done an InDesign project, your InDesign project is a collection of links. It's a collection of external files. So you really want to collect all those files in one location and have them in case you have a problem for later. So now that my book is finished, I'm going to use this function in InDesign called package. I highly recommend when you're all done your project that you package your work first. Packaging is going to create a folder, and it's going to create all the relevant files you need to finish your project. So if I package my document, it's making a copy of my InDesign file, but it's also making copies of all my images, Illustrator files, Photoshop files. It's putting everything together in one folder. And I'm just going to jump to my, if it'll let me, just jump to my desktop here. And I'll just show you in the demo folder. So what is that? Cloudshops demo. Yeah, so I just did a little package folder. And so it's got my fonts, it's got my links, and it's got my InDesign document, and it's got this IDML file. In case there's a version corruption, I can use the IDML as a backup. So basically my whole project is backed up here. And so assuming that we're ready to go to print, I'm going to export a PDF. So I'll export to PDF right now. I'll put it in the same Cloudshops folder here. So I'm going to save my PDF, and I'm going to change this to, press quality, all pages. And really, I just make sure I do all pages and make sure my compression's at 300, 300. Marks and bleed, you just want to include crop marks. You can use your document bleed setting. Whatever the number is here, you want your offset to match that number. If you're worried about color management, you can modify your color profiles here. So you can convert to a destination profile, and you can set a color profile here in your document. So honestly, if you guys have like an RGB, someone gave you a bunch of RGB Photoshop files, you can convert to CMYK at this step here, right? It'll do the color conversion. So if I export right now, this is going to output my PDF, which is going to give me a printable document that I can send to a printer to get my book manufactured, right? Now, while that's processing, I can see the little spinning wheel here. I wanted to show you guys one other way that you can print your book. So this is how you'd set up your file if you're sending it out to like a service provider. So if you're sending your file to like Allegra Printing or like Copies Plus or something, they can like arrange your book spreads and like do the printing. If you wanted to maybe print from home, maybe you have your own laser printer. I just wanted to show you one other way that you can do this is there's a function in your InDesign menu at the very bottom here called Print Booklet. And Print Booklet will arrange your document into spreads for printing. And all you have to do there is just make sure that you arrange for the correct printer. So in this case, I'm going to use a PostScript file. So I'm going to print to PostScript, and then under my PPD, I'm going to use Adobe PDF 9. So I'm just going to make a PDF out of this. If you guys had a specific printer system, you could choose your printer. I'm just going to do the generic Adobe PDF. And Oliver, I gave you a link for that where people can find that. So that's something Adobe provides for free. If you don't own a home printer, install the Adobe PDF 9 as a PPD, and then you can just make PDFs that are, you can take that out and get it printed at a print shop or printed on whatever printer you like. So I'll just set this up for 11 by 17, landscape and centered. And let's just preview that. So there's my booklet there. And then I'll just add my crop marks. And there we go. So that has all of my printer spreads. So if I printed these pages double-sided, I could just print this on my own printer, lay them together, fold it, staple it. I have a mini comic now. So print booklet is your best friend if you're trying to do your own home printed minis. So I'm just going to go ahead and print that. I'll just save this to the desktop here. And while that's printing, let's just go to my my Finder here. So I did print my PDF. Okay. So there's my printable PDF. So if I was sending this out to like Hemlock printers or some kind of service provider, they just want a PDF that looks like this, where it has all the single pages with the crop marks on it. That's all they want from me. Now, if you wanted to print from home, that little PostScript file can be opened with Acrobat Distiller. And let's run that through. And I think that opened up. Oh, it's not quite done. Okay. 90%. Okay. Oh, there we go. I think that just finished. There we go. So that's print booklet. So that's going to give me my basically inside cover, outside cover, and then like all my spreads. If I were to lay these pages one on top of the other and fold it, I would have a booklet, right? So I would say for home printing, this is what you want to do, but I would never give this to a printer. I wouldn't send this to Hemlock printers because they have a group of people that they take these files and they organize them in a way that makes sense for them and how they print. If you send this off to a professional printer, it's making life more difficult for them because they maybe don't need things set up this way. Maybe they're going to set it up in 4s or 8s. Just send them single pages. But if you're printing from home, you can do it this way. And then you can see here how when I printed it, like all the center spreads, like they all stop right on the fold line. So it fuses them together where they need to be. That's where those free floating pages come in handy. So that's, I think, kind of the time I have. I was hoping to maybe talk about covers, but I think we're time is short. So maybe because we just got a couple minutes left, I think I'll just mention to everyone, I'll stop the share here. But I'm just going to mention to everyone that this video is going to be recorded and posted on the Cloudscape site. And I have the working files for this. So if you wanted to go through the recording later and try the stuff out, I have all the links and files. So you can actually try building this comic yourself. So I have that on my itch.io. It is $5 to get the files, but I have those files if you wanted to try it out. And I do have some more videos that are going to be on the way. So when we post my socials, I'm going to be having some links up with more tutorials like this. So I'm going to do some more in-depth stuff on doing 2-color printing and cover design and that kind of stuff. But hopefully this gave you guys a really good just overview of kind of just your basic mini comic layout, just sort of some best practices. And since we have a couple more minutes here, maybe we can do some questions and answers, or I can just demo some stuff.
We got some questions. Okay. first question from Marnilla is we noticed that you use the TIFF files even for grayscale pages. Is there a recommended way for the format?
Oh, I mean, I just find TIFFs are just like the best for print. Like they're just like a tank. Like they never screw up on you. They're always reliable. They're like this old format, but they're just, it's like it works. So you can do PSD, like you could do a layered PSD and it would work too, probably. Sometimes transparencies are a problem, and I just like TIFFs are just a little bit smoother. And actually, I didn't have time to really get into this, but I'll do a quick screen share here. So one other thing that I like about TIFFs, I'll just go to where I have 2 pages side by side. So one other thing that I really like about TIFFs is that with TIFFs, and you can only do this with a TIFF, you can't do this with a PSD or a PNG or anything else. If you have a TIFF in InDesign and you select the page that's grayscale, and it has to be grayscale, not color, but if you can see that it's actually selecting the black color of the page. So if I actually choose another color, then now I've got a blue page, right? And if I select this page, again, it's a grayscale TIFF, and now I've got a magenta page, right? So like, if you want to just do like a funky, like one color print job that's not black, you can just switch that out in a TIFF. So much easier than any other format. Like when I did like Fantastic Frights, where it was a 2-color print job, like TIFFs are just so much easier for like Pantone color. If you're doing like spot color, it's just so much easier to deal with. Like if you're doing like a full color comic, like CMYK, we could make an argument for just doing a layered PSD, but just like specifically for black and white and Pantone limited palette, like TIFFs are just, they're just the best. They're like a tank. They always do what you need them to do.
That's super handy. I thought about that myself. Good to know that InDesign is the best one for that, or rather TIFF is. Kelly would like to know, is it possible to combine different InDesign files together?
Yes. Yeah, that's what book files are all about. So actually maybe
don't worry about time.
Yeah, no. I was just trying to think if I have like a quick like example on hand. Yeah, here I can pull something up here. So I'll just show you guys. This is like top secret Outbreak Diaries from Cloudscape Comics. But I have a book file that I set up. So this is so I have like so I made a book. So it's called Outbreak Diaries, and then I have a cover image here, and then I have the interior page here, and then I have the ebook here. So I'll just open this up. So here's the cover, right? And that's done in a spread. So it has like the spine, back cover, front cover. But then in a separate document, I have my like InDesign like pages. So like my separate pages are in here. And Jason had a white border on everything, so I didn't bother staggering them because there's no margin conflict. But like this way I can deal with this like page that's like not the same dimension as this. And so like I have one document for the cover and then one document for the interior, and I link them together with a book file. And a book file is basically just like add document, remove document, print document, save document. Like it's just a little frame that you just like link things together in. So yeah, that's how you link them together with a book file. And that's how you do your like covers. That's how you connect your covers to your interiors for packaging and printing.
Awesome. I remember when we were talking earlier, you'd link the barcode generator.
Oh yeah. That's just like if anyone wants to. So I have a barcode I included in the list of files. Like I have a little dummy barcode I was going to use in making the back cover, but you should never have to pay to make barcodes. So just that link there for the barcode generator, that's my best free barcode system. So if you guys ever want to make a barcode, just use that website. All the Cloudscape barcodes get made there. It costs us nothing. You just have to get your ISBN number. So that's your job. You have to get the ISBN number, but if you have the ISBN number, the barcode generator makes the barcode for you for free.
That's a really good resource. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I think I had one more last question. Me personally, was that you showed us a lot of good stuff on InDesign today, and I'm wondering if you had recommendations for other programs that people can use to do similar things. I know a lot of the tools can be found in Photoshop, but I don't know if there's any like the more specific stuff can be found in there.
I mean, like, it's funny because like, if you were to say, could you recommend a program as an alternative to Photoshop, I would have some recommendations. Or if you said, is there a program I could use instead of Illustrator, I'd have some recommendations. Is there a program I can use instead of InDesign? Not really.
Ooh.
I mean, like, Clip Studio, if you do the super expensive like Clip Studio EX or whatever, they have the multi-page. You can do like a little page spread layout thing like I just had in InDesign. I've tried it. I hate it. It doesn't give me what I want. The tools are terrible. It's confusing. I don't like it. Yeah, like InDesign just really suits me the best. What is that? I'm sure someone will talk about, there's some kind of, can't remember now. There's a company that's done like a competing version of all of these things. And I know someone's trying to tell me that their version of InDesign was pretty good, but I don't know. I'm like, I've been so embroiled in the Adobe ecosystem that, like, I will admit, like, part of it is like, I've got a thing that works and I'm not super interested in like learning more software. But like, I mean, no one has shown me anything that really has impressed me yet. Like Clip Studio, I really think a lot of people don't need to own Photoshop anymore. If you're a comic book artist, you don't need Photoshop. Clip Studio is great. Procreate's great. Illustrator, there's some good vector stuff, but like, there's alternatives too. But like, I just have not found, just in terms of like maybe you could do like a really base, you guys got me on a thing now, but you could do like a basic comic. You could maybe just do this comic with like Clip Studio or like a competing program. But like, let's say you have to do 3 unique Pantone colors and add a spot gloss and make it a hardcover. Like, it's just gonna be such a pain. Like, you just use InDesign because it has all the tools to make that super smooth and easy.
Right
like
on.
If it's anything more complicated than a staple book, like, use InDesign.
It's really good advice. Good to know. All right, well, I think that was the last question that we have tonight. I'm just going to post one more link in here. That is a link directly to Jeff's website. You can check out all his comics and buy all his products.
Yeah, I think that's my link tree, so it's all there, everything.
Perfect.
Yeah, and like I say, I'm going to be having future short videos covering different topics that I'm going to be posting very soon on my Vimeo and Patreon. And like I said, the working files for this are on my itch.io, which I think there's a link for that too. So if you wanted to try to build this book yourself, the files are there.
A great resource.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jeff. I hope some of you guys tune in to some of the other videos he's going to be releasing in the future, and throw him some money, get some of those files. Sounds a really good resource to have. I think Ed Guy was asking if will there be a recording of this stream? Yes, there will. This one will be uploaded to the Cloudscape Comics YouTube channel in particular. So check them out. You'll find some of the other previous Cloudshops that we've recorded as well. Not all the Cloudshops, because some artists prefer not to be recorded, but most of them you'll find them there.
I'll make sure all the links are. I'll probably be the guy posting the YouTube, so I'll make sure they're on there too.
And Jeff will put it together for us. All right, with that, we'll bid everybody good night. Thanks for tuning in. Oh, I always forget to do this, but when is the next one? When's the next one, Oliver? He has that information.
There is going to be a next one. It looked pretty exciting.
It isn't until later. The next one is Teaching Comics with Janice Liu. So this is actually something Jeff could have also taught, but he's teaching this one. But How do you teach people how to make comics? How do you teach people how to do art? And if you want to get involved in the business of making some money with your own knowledge, how do you learn to do that? How do you do workshops with kids and adults and teach your skills to them? So Janice is going to be teaching that kind of topic on August 16th at 7:30, the same place, the same time, and we'll see you guys then. Have a good night, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Have a good night.